All right, I had some requests from some people to do numbers 3 and 4 from the lesson 16 homework. So here is number 3. I'm not going to replace the cosine with an x. I'm just going to solve as is. If you want to do that, you can. So I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. Anybody hear the beagle in the background? And that gives me 3 cosine theta equals 0. Divide both sides by 3. I get cosine theta equals 0. Now, anytime I have sine or cosine and they are equal to 1, 0, or -1, I want to look on the unit circle for those answers. So let me sketch the unit circle real quick. Put my coordinates in. So on the unit circle, remember that x is cosine. So we go to all the x values where cosine is 0. And it happens here at 90 and down here at 270. So 90 and 270 are your two solutions to number 3. Okay, here is number 4. So number 4 is tricky because the fraction doesn't look like anything that we're used to seeing. So let's first just try to get tangent by itself. Just using some algebra here, I'm going to add the 3 over, and I get radical 3 tan theta equals 3. Divide both sides by radical 3, and I get tan theta equals 3 over radical 3. Now, here is where the problem lies. 3 is not a side from any of our triangles that we've been working with. Radical 3 is, but 3 is not. So we need to figure out what these sides are. Now, this is the kind of stuff you're going to see in pre-calc for sure. So don't get too hung up on it, because I won't ask you anything this tricky on anything that I assign to you guys for a grade. But so how did this become 3 over radical 3? All right, that's what we got to figure out. Well, if you take radical 3 over 1, which is something that we know. So let's talk about that for a second here. So we got 30, 60, 90. So we have 1, 2, and radical 3. So radical 3 and 1 we're familiar with. That's going to be the opposite and adjacent for 60 degrees. So how does radical 3 over 1 relate to 3 over radical 3? Well, if you take radical 3 over 1 and you multiply it on the top and bottom, both by radical 3. Now, you might say, well, why would you do that? Well, that's what happens in pre-calc. You start to get these weird-looking fractions that you got to figure out where they came from. And I'm going to show you how we can do it on here in just a second. But if you multiply the top and bottom by radical 3 times radical 3 is just 3, and 1 times radical 3 is radical 3. So that is why radical 3 over 1 and 3 over radical 3 are actually the same thing. So that tells us that we're dealing with 60 degrees, because tangents opposite over adjacent, we got radical 3 over 1, radical 3 over 1, opposite over adjacent. So we're dealing with 60 degrees. It's a positive 3 over radical 3, or radical 3 over 1 if you want to call it that. So we're looking for places where tangent's positive. Tangent is positive in A and T. So if we draw a 60-degree reference angle in both of those quadrants, 60 degrees is its own reference angle, so 60 it is. This angle right here, though, if you open it up and land right there, that's 180 plus 60, which is 240. So 60 and 240 are your two solutions. Now, just real quick, I can show you on the calculator. This is something you guys did in geometry. First, you want to make sure your calculator is in degree mode. So make sure mode and degree is highlighted. Let me get out of there. If I wanted to know what angle had a tangent of 3 over radical 3, you can use what's called the inverse tangent button. So right above tangent in blue there is tan with a little -1 on it. That means inverse tangent. You use this button in geometry. So if I go second tan, that's going to get my inverse tan, the tan with a little -1 on it. And in there, I put 3 divided by radical 3. Get out of there, close the parentheses. The calculator can tell me what angle has a tangent of 3 over radical 3. Now, it's only going to give me 60. You got to come find the other angles, right? You got to do the work for ASTC and draw your reference angles and all that, but it's going to at least tell you that you're dealing with 60. All right, so if you ever get stuck with a fraction like this that you can't quite figure out where it comes from, you can always do that on the calculator and it'll get it for you. Let me know if you need any more help.